So now that the final UFC of the year has finished, we now have just one particular major fight card left in the entire calendar, which is the Day of Reckoning, taking place in Saudi Arabia with literally an all-star boxing card. And I'm going to give you a reason why I think we should really be glad for this event, even though there are some pushbacks considering that we're not getting the fight such as Deontay Wilder taking on Anthony Joshua. Now, that's quite a bit of a bummer. What's also a bummer is the fact that, well, we are getting Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, but now we're trying to wonder, where does Francis Ngannou play into all this? Now that he's a ranked WBC boxer, out of all things, especially just coming out of the UFC as the linear heavyweight undisputed champion. So the reason why this card is amazing is because it's going to give us matchups later down the road. Now, does Lyndon Arthur taking on Bivol do anything for you in terms of competitive architecture? Probably not. And I'm going to tell you why. Well, for the simple fact that we already know as hardcore fight fans that Arthur Beterbiev and Bivol are already top of the hills in terms of the names that we want to see compete amongst each other. You have Arthur Beterbiev, who has a 100% knockout ratio in his whole entire fight, very similar to Shavkat Rakhmonov, who has an 18-0 record, and all of them by stoppage. So this is a very exciting prospect. You have somebody like Bivol, who has taken on Canelo, has reached the highest heights of boxing, even though the casuals may not see it that way, because with a name like Bivol, and even beating someone like Canelo sometimes is not enough. And I believe a lot of that is sort of like the Chris Weidman effect. The same thing that I've been going over and over again in this particular channel, which is what? Just because you beat a big name, it doesn't mean that you're going to be big time after that. It's not possible. Not all the time. You got to have the right amount of formula, and not only formula, but the right amount of ingredients in order to make certain things happen, like what I mentioned with Khabib, having the religious tension, having the geopolitical tension that adds along with that pre-Putin, before the Ukrainian conflict. So there was a lot that was going on with that. And it created, guess what? A new set of eyeballs that put Khabib into the mainstream stratosphere. So this is what you could possibly see with somebody like Bivol. Let's say he goes in there with someone like Arthur. And again, British fighter. And I can't emphasize enough how much I tell you guys that British fighters, honestly, are a lot easier to promote. They know how to talk. And on top of that, you got to understand, Great Britain has a history of Shakespeareanism and theater, which means they are talented people when it comes to music, arts, and everything in between. And how does that translate to martial arts? A whole lot of money. Even though you have the likes of Tom Aspinall and Leon Edwards, who are a little bit more of a quiet type of personality, a laid-back type of personality, somebody that is a little bit more stoic in the way that they approach things as opposed to promoting their emotions to the world. So, let's say Bivol gets a knockout against somebody like Arthur. That does great numbers for him. That does an even bigger audience for him, which, by the way, attracts the European boxing crowd, the people that have followed Arthur, whether that would be in the UK, Scotland, maybe even France, or maybe even in the Norwegian states. So now they create a little bit of hype into that, even though Bivol is very much well known in the Hispanic boxing community. And why would he not, considering the fact that he beat the biggest Hispanic star in all of boxing's history, which is Canelo Alvarez. So that's what this matchup is setting it up for. Something to that effect. Now you have Jarrell Miller taking on Daniel Dubois. Why is this significant? Well, for one, Daniel Dubois is coming off of a loss from Alexander Usyk. And many people don't really see it as a loss. They sort of see it as Daniel Dubois being the guy that won that entire fight, with, of course, a controversial ending. And that's for you to decide what's neither here or there. But the bottom line is there are a strong, vast majority of people out there that really believe Daniel Dubois won that fight. But then there's also a strong minority of people that said, well, Alexander Usyk hit him in the right spot and it was legal and everything was fair play. Well, it sort of created a big clout for Daniel Dubois. Now, this is more of an elimination fight. Why is that? Jarrell Miller, undefeated. Yes, disputed in ways of controversy behind his drug testing. Yes, it's out there, but guess what? It puts his name out there. And he was supposed to be the guy to fight Anthony Joshua, only for Anthony Joshua to lose to a late replacement in Andy Ruiz. And when that happened, guess what? Now we're in this situation where it shook up the entire heavyweight division. Well, this is what the Saudis are trying to do. They're trying to shake up the division, knowing that there are people out there that believe Dubois is the lineal, unified heavyweight champion of the world due to his performance with Usyk. But there's also people that are not convinced yet, and with a great performance on his part against Miller, I think it will do him some really good in his promotion to, let's say, fight the other bigger names in the heavyweight division. So that's what we have going on with this. Now, what about Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua? Why are they fighting completely different people? Well, I'll tell you why. You see, what's going on right now, in all honesty, this is not a favorable matchup for Anthony Joshua. You think that it is? When has Anthony Joshua ever been in a favorable fight? Not since Klitschko, not even since Carlos Takam, not even any of these fights that he's dominated. There were a few times in every single one of his fights, including down to his amateurs back in the Olympics, to where Anthony Joshua struggled. So because of that, he's an exciting heavyweight, he's a vulnerable heavyweight, but he's also an ever-evolving heavyweight, which makes him exciting and puts him in very exciting fights. And if Otto Wallin was to win that fight, man, guess what? It would be very big for Sweden for him to come out in a victory like that, because you look at Otto Wallin, you want to talk about close in matchup, look what he did in the Tyson Fury fight during the pandemic. He cut Tyson Fury up. Most doctors that would go in any part of any commissions around the world could have easily stopped that fight. New York commissions could have easily stopped that fight. You know, they stopped the Nate Diaz and the Jorge Masvidal fight based on the fact that Nate Diaz was cut up so badly. And Tyson Fury really resembled Nate Diaz in the Jorge Masvidal fight. Yet, they ended up not stopping it towards his favor. And even with the points on that particular fight, people said that Otto Wallin gave a good account of himself. Well, when you are Tyson Fury, or you are Anthony Joshua, or even if you're Deontay Wilder, people can't look decent around you. Because if they do, and then guess what? If people are going to question your greatness, it used to be that the top three heavyweights in a division were Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, and then who was the other guy? Tyson Fury. And that was it. Now, it's Alexander Usyk in the mix just because of the fact that he went and upsetted Anthony Joshua. A small Ukrainian, undefeated as a cruiserweight, undisputed champion, moving up to heavyweight. And here he is doing a number on Anthony Joshua. So it shook up the entire division, which brings me to why this particular card is very much important. For one, you got to understand the Saudis don't really care about, let's say, building up a certain fighter to greatness or this and that. And you can even argue when Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder, all these older guys that are within our age group are probably going to retire. And guess what? It's going to make the game very uninteresting to the point where it sets it back in the Klitschko days. If you remember, the Klitschko days were, well, you know what? It was a staple for a hardcore boxing fan. Meaning that if you're a hardcore boxing fan, you're going to stick around for all the fights no matter what, even if they are boring, even if they're not interesting, even if they don't have the big hype promotion that you have with the Anthony Joshuas of the world, the way that you have the Saudis now involved with concerts on top of fights, on top of doing entertainment on the side, creating big events just to boost up their tourism and things of that nature. You didn't have that back then, but guess what? If you're a hardcore fan, it was good enough for you. Well, guess what? When these guys retire, everything that's going to come about with the Jared Andersons of the world, the Edgar Berlangas of the world, all these guys that are going to surpass Canelo in age, not by defeat, and maybe even David Benavidez. You know what? You're not going to know any of these names. It's going to take a while to promote them, and not only promote them, make their names as big as the current names that you already know them to be right now. Can you imagine? How about 2014 Anthony Joshua? Do you remember how hard it was to try to get this guy promoted, to get people to believe that he was more than just a stiff robot that had a whole lot of more boxing skills than what people would have even had expected? But all along, we just found out that he was nothing more than a guy that was just evolving his game and put in a dangerous situation with Ruiz to where it made his stock not go down because he's not a big name. The type of big name that Anthony Joshua is, his stock is always going to stay up whether he wins or loses. But it's one of those situations where Anthony Joshua sort of lost a little more than what he could have gained. Okay, meaning that he could have gone on to become one of the greatest of all time. Because remember, he has yet to fight the likes of Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury. He can still go out and rematch Alexander Usyk. And who's to say Alexander Usyk is not going to get old at some point to where now Anthony Joshua is going to come in there for the easy pickings? Right? Maybe he's just going to wait till he gets older. Maybe Anthony Joshua doesn't want to fight Deontay Wilder because he wants to wait till he gets older. Or maybe the Saudis are doing exactly what they're doing in order to set up fights and to make money in between the bigger fights that they're going to make later down the road. So let's imagine, what if Otto Wallin wins against Anthony Joshua? Well, a lot of people are going to look at that in two ways, at least if you're a reasonable-minded person. A reasonable-minded person is going to look at that and say, you know what? Maybe perhaps the heavyweight division is a lot more competitive than we think, and these other guys just don't have the type of notoriety or media attention on their side in order to fulfill those particular auras that we want to send out to the media world, the social media aspects of things, the following, the commercial value of Otto Wallin. I mean, does this guy even do any commercials with, let's say, IKEA back in Sweden? Probably not. But you look at Anthony Joshua, he's involved in a lot of big British companies, even American ones, such as Under Armour. He's got Navy SEALs in there teaching him how to mentally deal with warfare and combat. And then he's got JD Sports. He's got Boss Hugo as one of his sponsors. So he's a big commercial deal, even if he wins or he loses. But because of that, we expect more out of him. We expect a certain skill level that should match that particular skill set. And if not, then what are we doing here in the first place? But that's the reality of Anthony Joshua in this particular fight. Now, what if Parker was to win? Well, we're going to say the same thing that we would have said if Anthony Joshua was to lose, is to say something to the effect, well, these guys are washed up. Not knowing or not understanding that, Parker is a former world champion. And we're not going to give him any credit for that. We're not going to give any credit for Otto Wallin if he wins. And forget the fact that he went and put it on Tyson Fury. Probably a whole lot better than Francis Ngannou. One can argue that. Of course, I don't argue that. I think Francis Ngannou gave Tyson Fury the fight of his life. But again, what makes Tyson Fury entertaining is what makes Anthony Joshua entertaining. They are both very vulnerable heavyweights. and susceptible to making mistakes with the type of competition they have out there, guess what? That creates a compelling fight. So that's what you have going on with the Day of Reckoning. What you have going on. What is at stake? What is going to happen if one fighter wins versus the other? And then there's probably a whole lot more fights within that card as well. Now, how about Jarrell Miller getting in the face of Anthony Joshua? Telling Anthony Joshua that, yeah, man, you know, you chickened out on me or this and that. And it's like as if it was Anthony Joshua's fault that you got caught with drugs. And then Anthony Joshua told him that, you know what, I am the landlord. You're here to be the opener of my show. As sort of like the way Wu-Tang Clan would tell, let's say, one of these new rap acts saying, you know what, you guys are opening for me. I would imagine there would probably be some conflict in that. It would probably say, yeah, no, this is what it is, or this and that. It's whatever. But either way, don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you guys like the content. I hope you guys enjoyed what I have given you in terms of some objective reality with what is going on in the fight world. And I hope you guys don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to tell a friend to tell a friend. I will see you guys soon. Later.